So let's have a look at some actual code that uses a class. So just to start with, we'll have a very simple home hub where we just have a controller, the loop that will be just very similar to the one we used before. And we'll have a single device, which is a CeilingLight, which is represented by a class. Okay, so in terms of Python, how do you tell it's a class? Well, you just use the word class, followed by another number of function definitions. So our class is going to basically have as I said, they're called methods when they are attached to an object often, but they're just functions, and they're just things that the class can do. There's two other very important things that we need inside our class. One is init. This is the function that's called at the beginning when the object is created. So when we use our class to build an object, the method that is called, or function that is called init. And usually it defines what data the object contains. It doesn't have to. You can add extra data in other methods, but usually it defines it usually we define that in the init method, and often this method is called a constructor. Okay, and then the other thing that's really important that we have to know about is the word self. It's a keyword that refers to the object. So when an object wants to get hold of something inside that object, it has to use the word self. Now this is if you're comparing this with other languages, actually class is very common. So the word class you'll see in other languages. The init is not so common, but all languages, when they use classes, they have a constructor usually. Self is a bit of a Python anomaly as far as I am aware. So it's mostly in other languages they do things slightly differently, but self is actually quite useful because it makes it very explicit when you're trying to get hold of a bit of data, where you're getting it from. And that may not have made sense, but let's have a look at some code, and hopefully that will start to make sense. So here is the code for the CeilingLight class. Okay, so you can see just before we dive into the details, you can see at the top here we've called it a class CeilingLight. Okay, it's normally done in this way, where you have it in uppercase, this kind of camel case it's known, where you've got a capital letter at the start of each word. And then we've got this init function, and then we've got some other functions, switch on, switch off, and status. So this CeilingLight, we can create one, we use the init function, and then we can switch on, switch off, and we can get the status. And the status, as you'll see, it just prints out whether it's on or off. Okay, so let's look in detail. So for the init function, it needs to define what data this thing contains, and one thing it contains basically is just the fact that it's on or off. So it's a Boolean variable which initially is set to off because we want the light to be off when we first initialize it in our system. And you'll notice I'm using self here. That tells Python that this value, this on, is part of this CeilingLight object. Okay, and then we've got a name, so we can say what the name of this object is, which you don't need that, but it's useful when we're printing things out. So we're going up again. When we get to this point here, we can print self.name has been initialized, and when that runs, when we initialize a CeilingLight, it will say CeilingLight has been initialized. Or you can see a bit further down, self.name is on, self.name is off. So we're getting that name, CeilingLight is on, CeilingLight is off. Okay, then we got methods that switch the light on and off. So they just change the value of that on variable. So it's either set to true or false. And then they print out, each of them also prints out the status. So you can see they're using the self.status to call this status method at the bottom. And self.status just looks at whether it's on or off, and then it prints out a corresponding statement. So CeilingLight is on, CeilingLight is off. Okay, so if we run this code, or in fact I think this is a test file, CeilingLight 02_test, it shows how you could use it. Okay, this isn't the home hub. This is just running some code to test all the methods. So first of all, we create a new CeilingLight, and we just do that by saying CeilingLight here, this variable equals this class. And what that does, that first line, didn't put it in, that first line calls the init method and sets it going. So that's why it says CeilingLight has been initialized. Then we can do call the status function, and that just says CeilingLight is off because at the moment it's off. Then we can switch it on. Okay, that switches it on, so that changes the variable inside it and then prints out the status again. Switch it off, changes the variable inside it, prints out the status again, and then we can print the status again. So it's just testing all the methods. It's trying everything out to see what happens when you use them. And I've only put a print. These extra print statements are just to separate out all the output lines. Okay, so now we can take our ceiling class and we can include it in our controller. So we've got a home hub with a single device, a CeilingLight. So what do we do? Now the changes I've done, I've highlighted in yellow. So first of all, we need to import that class in. So this controller needs to know about the CeilingLight class. Okay, and then when we create, ignore this chosen function at the moment. When we create the set of devices, we create a CeilingLight, just like we did in the previous example, and we put it in the list of devices. Okay, we're going to do this with other classes in a minute, but for the moment we just put one thing in the list of classes. The rest of it is more or less the same as before. So we ask what the name is, hello, say hello to the person. The loop's exactly the same, I think. Yeah, the loop's exactly the same, and then we say bye when it's finished. So the chosen thing, all we need to do now, rather than getting the name from a list or from a dictionary or something, I think we got it from a list, didn't we, in the last example? We now can get the name from the object. So this chosen looks at the object. If the name is in the command or the name, okay, this is just to simplify the if the user just types CeilingLight with no space, this bit of code kicks in. Just ignore that for the moment. If the name is in the command, so if CeilingLight is in the command, then it's a chosen device. Okay, so main change to highlight, import CeilingLight. If we can use this device.name, it's really nice because now we can get this. The device knows about what its name is. We don't have to get it from a list or anything, and then use it to do tests like whether it's in the command. We can create the CeilingLight. That's done at the beginning of the program. Put it in the list of devices, and then at the end we can switch off all the devices. So what you'll see, you'll notice that dot notation. We use that. So dot name, dot switch off. We can use that to get access to the data inside the object, and also to change the object by calling functions inside the object or methods. Okay, the main loop. Okay, there is one change. Since we only have one device, it's perhaps a bit unnecessary, but it runs like before. So we ask the user what they want. They say, they give us a command: CeilingLight off, CeilingLight on. We look through the list of devices. Let's say this is a bit unnecessary, this loop in the middle here, to look through the list of devices because there's only one of them. So it's either the CeilingLight or not, but we're going to extend this code. And so we look through to see if that device in that list is the one that the user's chosen, and if it's chosen, if it's not chosen, then if they spell something wrong, then we say the system says we don't understand that. Otherwise, if the device chosen is the CeilingLight, then we look at the command and see if it's got the word on, we switch the device on, and if it's got the word off, we switch the device off. Okay, so again, we're using this device dot and the name of the method to change to do something inside the device. So notice now the list of devices, which only has one thing in it, the list of devices now contains object. So we're going to be able to extend that by putting more objects in. Notice that we can access the object's data, so we can do device.name, and we can get hold of that. We could even change it if we wanted to. We could change it to spotlight or something else, but we in this example we're not going to want to do that. And we can access its method, so we can do device.switch on and device.switch off. Okay, and depends on which is more convenient, which we do. Here, when switching off, so we could, yeah, sorry, when I said that, I meant we could do device.on equals true or device.off equals true. Here, when we're switching it off, on and off, it's easier to use a method because that both turns the device on, it changes the value of the device.on variable, and it also prints out the status, which is, so it gives a confirmation to the user that something's happened. Okay, so that's our first example with using a separate class, the CeilingLight class, and creating this object, the CeilingLight object. I'm going to finish this video here, and then we'll move on to put more and more objects in or more and more classes and objects into our code.